You probably already know that if you want to become a Renaissance man, the best way to do that is not to try to do everything all at once, right? But rather focus deeply on one thing at a time before moving on to the next thing. And that's what I had initially thought too, until today I watched a video that challenged that viewpoint. And it didn't challenge it in the way that you might think. It actually taught me something really interesting. The video argues that rather than building up everything one by one to the point where you're pretty good at a lot of things, what you actually want to do is build up one thing to an extremely high level to reach complete mastery in one domain, and then use that in order to branch off into other domains with the master domain as your base. Now, let me kind of put that into an analogy for you, okay? So imagine that you have 100 points, right? And you need to get 3 satellites up into orbit. And each satellite costs 70 points to get it into orbit. And once it's actually in space orbiting the Earth, you don't have to worry about it costing you any points because gravity is just going to take care of itself, right? So what you would do, obviously, if you tried to launch all 3 at once, it wouldn't work because each costs 70 points and you only have 100 points, right? So what you would have to do is launch each one individually, and then eventually you'd have 3 satellites orbiting your planet, right? And that's kind of the first approach that we had initially discussed. Now, this alternative approach is, what if you had one satellite that costed 100 points? And that satellite, it costs all your points, so you really have to focus on it. And once you get this really powerful, potent, expensive satellite up in the air, it can actually start producing other satellites on its own. That's why it costs 100 and not 70. So here's another example, right? Here's the Polymath life that a lot of people are currently building. All right, so this right here is your career. Let's just say you're doing computer science and you're a programmer. Here's your programming portfolio, right? Nice big tree. This smaller little tree right here, this is like your Duolingo Spanish streak or something like that, right? You're like pretty decent at Spanish, right? Here is your body, right? You've been putting in a lot of work in the gym, built a decent amount of muscle. And right here is like your ability to play tennis, let's just say you play tennis on the weekend with the boys, all right? So here is your kind of life, right? And this is better than like 99% of people. This is a cute little life. As you can see, it's really good. It looks nice and it's cute, all right? On the other hand, here's what I'm talking about now, right? All right, so this is the type of thing that I want to build, right? So like, look at this. The base of the tree right here is everything. This tree is nothing without the base, right? This base is just, look at the girth of this base. It's huge, right? So this tree right here is what happens when you build mastery in one thing. You get this huge base, and then from there you can kind of branch off. And if you notice, these branches right here, they're still huge. They're still bigger than these entire trees, right? But they're only able to exist because they're branching off of this incredible foundation of mastery, right? And to give you an example of somebody who exemplifies this tree analogy here, let's take Andrew Huberman, all right? This right here, this base is his PhD and knowledge in neuroscience. It's absolutely incredible, huge, massive. Without the neuroscience PhD and knowledge, there is no like Andrew Huberman as we know it, right? And these things that branch off right here, this is his ability to create a podcast. This is his communication ability. This is his ability to do research. This is his physique, right? Like you can see that these huge, incredible things are branching off of that, but it all stems from one focal point. So this is cool and all, but the title of this video is the role of language learning in becoming that kind of Renaissance man, right? So if you've been paying attention, you'll kind of have figured out that there's only 2 ways this can go. Either language learning is your main thing, which is the main base of your tree, or it's not, and it's just a branch, right? And so either way, I'm going to be talking about both scenarios for you guys here. First, I'm going to be talking about if language is the main thing, the base of your tree. Now, this is not going to be most of you. In fact, 99% of people watching this video just want language to be a side thing. You're not really all about language like me, like I am, and I want it to be like my base of my tree, right? But I would highly recommend watching this anyways, because a lot of the examples that I'm going to give are going to be super instrumental in helping illustrate really important concepts to you guys. So still watch this part of the video, even if language is not your main thing. The first example that I have is earlier this year, I got a master's degree in 4 months, right? Like 4 months, I got a master's degree. It was an online self-paced program. And of course, the standard time for a master's degree is 2 years, right? And since it's self-paced, each term lasts about 6 months. And there's a very small percentage of the people that go through this particular online school that are able to actually complete a term in 6 months. My boss was actually one of those people, and he literally dedicated his entire life. And he described this, I was actually under him during this period of his life, and he was describing it to me as basically dedicating his entire life to it. And he barely was able to complete it within that 6 month time frame. Most people who like are a part of the incredibly rare group who complete it in one term in 6 months are very, like, they barely are able to do it, and they dedicate their entire life to doing it. Me, on the other hand, I did it in 4 months. And during that 4 months, I had a 2-week vacation to Japan and Vietnam. The entire time I was spending time with my family, studying languages, and I was still working full time. And to most people, that's like ridiculous, absurd, and unheard of. And they would think that I was some like super naturally gifted student, and I had built these incredible studious habits from early on in my life, which is actually not true at all. When I was getting my bachelor's degree, I had average grades. I was a huge procrastinator. I would cheat. Not allowed to say that online. I would cheat on a lot of my assignments. I would copy people. I would fail tests and have to retake them all. Like, I wasn't an efficient or a very studious person at all. I really was just kind of forcing myself through, and I wasn't very good at it, right? I mean, I wasn't like a terrible student or anything, but I wasn't like that great, okay? And actually, when I first started doing my master's degree, I was like shocked, literally shocked at my own ability to perform and do well in school. And upon thinking about this, I realized that I had actually just applied all of the techniques that I had honed and mastered for language learning, all the things that I teach you guys, to studying for my master's, and it worked really well. So one of the things that I would do is literally just copy paste a language learning technique. Is I would take the textbook, I would copy the text excerpts, and I would paste them into an AI audio generation, a TTS. And then I would download those files, and I would download them onto my phone, and I would listen to them at the gym and while I'm doing other things. So literally just passive listening, the language learning technique, it would really help kind of consolidate all the studying that I had done that day and help it kind of wash over me even when I'm not actively studying it. Obviously, you're not paying attention to it 100%, but even the stuff that you do pay attention to, there's literally times I remember that I would be thinking of an answer while taking a test and then remember it. And also at the same time, remember that it was something that I had passively listened to while at the gym or something like that, right? So super, super helpful technique that I use that I've never seen anybody else do that. I've never met anybody else who does that. Another thing was like just the deep work and the focus optimizations that I had learned from language learning. I had obviously one-to-one just applied those to my master's degree. Another thing was Anki. Like, I had never used Anki as a student ever in my life. And so I used Anki to memorize a bunch of like really key terms. And those Anki rules that I taught you guys of not learning things in Anki, all that stuff that I had to learn the hard way from language learning, I already knew, and I had a super effective Anki regimen going into some of my classes. And on top of that, I would even use like core definitions from AI, like the type of thing that I taught you guys to do with words in your target language. I used that technique. So basically what that is that I would, like, let's just say there's a term, and this term can mean one thing in accounting, but something slightly differently in operations. And people often confuse these things when you're getting like a business type of degree, right? And so what I would do is for terms like that, I would have ChatGPT give me a core definition, and I would learn that definition of that word, and then or that whatever term that may be. And so it would help me remember how to apply it in both of those different contexts, right? So things like that nobody else is doing, that I learned specifically to learn languages, I applied those techniques. And of course, the biggest thing was just like the ability to focus and read and things like that for long periods of time that I had developed naturally from language learning. But like all of those techniques combined to really help me, it turned me into a super student. And I had never really experienced that before. And the only thing that had changed from the point where I was a pretty average student to the point where I was able to get a master's degree in 4 months was the fact that I was really going hard on language study. That's literally the only thing. It's kind of obvious to see how language learning was able to help me get a degree because there's kind of like a connection there. They're both like intellectual, studious things. But language learning actually helped me with bouldering, like as in rock climbing, like bouldering. And this was like super unexpected. So I remember one time I was struggling really, really hard with this specific route, and I just couldn't figure it out for the life of me. And I was so deep in my own head. I was like manually thinking really hard of exactly the angles of which to grab things and how my foot's going to be positioned when I'm balanced on this hole and yada, yada, yada. And then I kind of got flashbacks to language learning. And I remember that the times when I would have the least productive study sessions when I'm studying a language are the times when I'm really trying hard to manually process the grammar patterns and structures in my head. And the best possible gains that I get from language learning are when I let my subconscious mind take over and I just simply watch, right? I simply just watch or listen. And same thing with speaking, right? Like when you're speaking, when you're trying to think of every word to say, you're going to screw up, you're going to fumble your words. But when you're just allowing your subconscious mind to kind of just spew out stream of consciousness speak, you will speak much more naturally and much better, right? And so I had thought of all these concepts like while I was resting during my break. And I said, you know what? I've been bouldering. It was at that point for a good couple of months. I had gone for a couple times a week for a couple months. And I was like, you know what? I'm probably like my brain has probably started to develop an intuition for this type of thing. I should just stop thinking about it and allow my subconscious mind to take over and use my kinesthetic intelligence to solve this problem for me. And I remember thinking, I'm just going to turn my brain off and do it. And I turned my brain off. I did not let a single thought into my brain. And I just jumped on the boulder and I didn't complete it, but I completed the part of it that I was stuck on. And by literally like stopping thinking, right? Just like and I wouldn't have came to that conclusion if it wasn't for like my experiences with language learning. And from that moment on, I would continue to use this type of technique where I focus really hard initially on the problem, and then I stop thinking and I just allow my body to figure it out naturally, right? Just like how with language acquisition, you study grammar first, and then you allow just to kind of get like a mold of it, just to kind of set your foot on the ground, and then you let your brain kind of figure it out from there, and you don't really try to drill it too hard after that, right? So that was a super interesting case study in how like my base that I'm building for language learning really helped me branch out into something completely different. Like it doesn't get much more different than that, right? Which was really, really cool. Another example that I'll give you guys is learning the bass guitar. I'm still very much a beginner in bass, by the way. I haven't been practicing for too long, but when I first had started practicing, I had kind of developed this practice routine for myself where what I would do is I would take a part of a song that I wanted to play, just a part of it, and then I would loop it and I would slow it down, right, to maybe like half speed at first. And I would try to play it. And then eventually when I got to the point where I could play half speed, I would go to 7.75 times speed. And then I would go to like full speed after that, right? It's like kind of slowly kind of getting it. And I would chunk it into pieces. So I'd do like one kind of part, and then I would add the next part, and then I would add the next part. And then once I could play the whole thing in sequence, I would increase the speed and then keep going and then increase, like that, rather than trying to play a whole song. And I've heard, I don't know any bass players. I'm not really too deep in the music community yet, but I've heard that what a lot of people do, like as beginners, is they'll try to play entire songs, like not chunking it and slowing it down. They'll literally just try to play the entire song at once. And they'll practice like this for years and make really, really bad progress and not be able to play anything like good. Right. And so when I had started watching videos on like how to practice bass and stuff like that, so many people were recommending the technique that I had already just kind of intuitively figured out for myself based on language coursing, right? And the way that language coursing works is basically you take like a really small, like 2-second clip, maybe even 1-second clip of somebody speaking, and you even slow it down sometimes, and you try to speak exactly like them, you imitate their accent. And then you increase the length of the clip, increase the speed of the clip, et cetera, just like the bass practice that I was doing, right? And so I had literally just applied language coursing to bass because I intuitively thought that it would be a good idea. And then when researching the best, most effective practice methods, my exact method was like the number one thing that everybody was recommending and saying that this is like the best possible way, right? Which is like, honestly, it's incredible to think of, right? Like if I had not even looked up a video on how to, get good at bass, and I had played for years after that, I would probably be leaps and bounds ahead of people who had also played for years, but just because I had studied language first and I was able to intuitively grasp like the best possible practice method from my years of screwing up and having horrible practice methods in language study, right? So that was like super, super cool that I had happened to me. So with all that said, I hope that you guys were able to draw a lot of inspiration and ideas from my type of examples. And now you're kind of probably getting your own gears turning and thinking of ways that you can apply this stuff for yourself. Because chances are you're probably not focused on language as your main thing like me. You probably have something else, right? And to that, my advice for you is figure it out yourself, bro. Like I don't know what your current main thing is, but what I would say is you got to find something and you got to commit to something that you're going to take to mastery. And if you want to do that, there's a couple of books that I recommend. The first one is a classic, Mastery by Robert Greene. This book is super good. It talks about basically everything you need to know about skill mastery with a bunch of examples. If you found my examples from my personal life pretty entertaining and pretty useful, this book has like dozens of ones that are even better than that. So definitely I would recommend that book. Next is Peak by Anders Ericsson. This book is super, super good as well. I have not finished it yet, but I'm going to make videos on this book because this book is super, super good and it talks about deliberate practice and skill acquisition. So I'd highly recommend these two books as a stack if you want to get really, really good at something. Okay. So read these books, pick something in your life, get super, super good at it. And the key to this, like the whole point of this video, right, is to think about how you can apply the things from your specific area of expertise to everything else. So I applied language expertise into other areas of my life. And so if you want to make language a part of your life, which I think you should, language is amazing, then what you should do is apply things from your personal field of expertise to language. I'll give you an example of this. There's this YouTuber called Vaughn Jean. He is a super cool... Why'd I just start glazing, bro? His main thing is that he is a guitar and piano player, right? So his main thing is music. But he's also fluent in Japanese. And he talks about how he basically learned how to study Japanese. It's the exact opposite as me, which is crazy. Like when I found this guy's, like what he was saying, it's just crazy to me. So he did the exact opposite. He learned how to practice music and how to practice it really well. And that's his area of expertise. And then he reverse engineered his music practice to language study, chorusing, spaced repetition, etc. And that's how he was able to get fluent in Japanese. So really, really cool how he was able to do like the opposite deconstruction as what I did, right? So in conclusion, everybody nowadays is trying to be like a polymath renaissance man, right? Which I think is amazing. I think this is one of the best things you can strive for. But the thing is, what a lot of people are doing, like unfortunately, is just trying to check boxes. Like, yeah, language, new language, check. Let me get the 5 minutes of Duolingo in. Yeah, the musical instrument box, check. Let me watch some like guitar videos. Like, that's not the way to do it. You should obsess and relentlessly chase one specific area of expertise and then use that as your driving force of getting good at everything else. All right, if you made it to the end of this video, here's what I'd like you to do, and I would really, really appreciate this. Take a moment and reflect on your area of expertise and think of a way you can apply something, some kind of strategy, trick, concept from your area of expertise into language, and then leave that in the comment section below. I might make whole videos on things that you guys say because this is invaluable knowledge that you guys are able to drop, right? Like I can't give you language learning advice from a gymnast's perspective, right? Because I don't do gymnastics, but you guys could give language learning advice from really cool perspectives. And I can use that to like make content and like talk about it with you guys. So that would be really, really cool. So yeah, thank you guys for listening.